So if, like me, you're easily the oldest person in the team where you work, the temptation is to think that that's a problem for you. And let's be honest, for some people it is, but it doesn't have to be. In this video and the next one, I'm going to be taking you through the tweaks and hacks that you can employ to be recognised as one of the greatest assets in your team because you're older, rather than in spite of. I can think of at least 2 times in my career when I've worked with guys, both times it was men, who were much older than the rest of us. Both times they had loads to contribute, but because they didn't do things right, they were treated as a doddery old irrelevance by the team. And it was a real shame because looking back from where I am now, if they had changed just a few things, they could have experienced a completely different working day. So let's go through a couple of principles, then we can get down to some specific hacks to employ. Firstly, the temptation is to see our age as a handicap, something that means it will be treated less seriously. When asked, words that come to mind for older workers can be sleepy, cynical, stuck in their ways, or even these. But that doesn't have to be the case. You could be thought of instead as experienced, calm, knowledgeable, seasoned, skilled, reliable, dedicated, committed, valuable. Now, while you feel like you're all of those things, the perception of your co-workers could be that you're on the other list. So let's go through some ways that the image can be changed. I use these as a checklist myself and it does work. And let's start with an obvious one, meetings. Let's start with our attitude in the meeting. Now, we may have seen the same things go wrong over the years. We may know that the approach being proposed is wrong, and we can definitely see the traps ahead. But you should be aware of coming across as cynical. For your own sake, you should never use phrases like, "that'll never work," or start sentences with, "we tried that 10 years ago," and instead, it's time to use one of the best tools for getting from list 2 back to list 1, and that's the question. By asking open questions, you can highlight the weaknesses of a particular course of action without actually saying it won't work. But you've got to be ready when asked to suggest positive alternatives as well. By asking questions, you get past the idea that you're in some way sitting outside of the issue, commentating on it. It pulls you into the team. It demonstrates active listening, which is a real winner in meetings, as I'm sure you already know. Next, beware of starting any input to a meeting with an anecdote from times past. Nothing contributes to the feeling that you're out of touch like an anecdote, and yes, that's even when it's bang on and completely relevant. You should hold those tales back. Tell them outside the meeting if you like, or at least don't offer them until somebody asks exactly why you hold the opinion you do. Make your point another way. And I'm assuming there was a point you were going to make before you were going to tell the anecdote, right? Another perception changing hack, read the room. The good thing about having been around for a while is that you can see the various meeting behaviours and characters in the context of your past experience. And this is akin to something like a superpower. We all know the attendee types. There's the grandstander, the quiet assassin, the comedian. For me though, there's something else here, and that's the ability to read the tone of the meeting. Is it relaxed? Is it difficult? Is there something else going on that's not being articulated openly? Use your experience to make sure your inputs and actions are aligned with the tone of the meeting. Now, a trick I use is that I normally try and stay slightly below the radar for the first couple of minutes in meetings while I get a sense of the tone. Online meetings can be trickier in this regard, but on the other hand, watching the reactions of people while things are being discussed by others can still tell you a lot, and that can be easier to do online. Next meeting hack, the worst stereotype, which I've seen in real life many times, and I'm sure you have too. It's when somebody zones out. They can even nod off in a meeting. I know it happens to everybody, no matter what age, but it isn't as toxic a behaviour for a young woman whose eyelids droop when the reason is that there's a toddler at home that everybody else is aware of. When you zone out, it just confirms the worst prejudices about older people in the workplace, so do anything to stay awake. For me, I think there's nothing wrong with asking even more questions, and my hack is that I will offer to take extra minutes and notes. You win because you seem to be participating, plus you have to remain engaged to keep the notes going. Watch out for falling into the stereotype that older people are less flexible. Meetings generally are less formal than they used to be, and even when they're more structured, they are frequently recorded, so don't feel like things are too loose just because the whole thing is deviating from the pre-planned agenda. From my perspective though, I impose my own structures by being really careful to take proper notes, whatever the meeting. So next let's talk about difficult meetings. These can be a real opportunity to shine for the most experienced of us. The key trait that I look for here is to bring calmness. Even when the youngsters have all lost their tempers or are arguing between themselves, your ability to maybe highlight the bigger picture is a real asset. Act as the summarise if you can by clarifying positions. If you can, try to diffuse things, but there's one thing to be careful of. Sometimes there's no good position to take when things have gone properly off the rails, and you actually can become a lightning rod pulling all the issues towards you and picking up a lot of negativity at the same time. My personal approach in these times is to make sure that you're an onlooker rather than a protagonist. If you are involved, my position again is to calm things by suggesting the discussion gets taken offline. But if you do have perspective, and you know that when people really lose their temper, you'll know that they'll frequently feel remorseful afterwards. Being able to reassure at those times is a great hack. Meetings can be a real opportunity to shine when you're the oldest person in the room. Think elder statesman. In the next video, I'm going to highlight several other hacks. I'm going to look at the working day, complete no-nos and shortcuts to make your age really work for you. And I'll see you there.